Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us, Madam Ambassador. If you could just take a moment, please, to introduce yourself and tell us what you do now, even though I know you have an extremely robust resume.
Good morning, I'm Valentine Rugwabiza. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Rwanda Development Board in Rwanda. I joined the Rwanda Development Board very recently, 7 months ago. I was appointed as the Chief Executive Officer. The Chief Executive Officer of the Rwanda Development Board is also a cabinet member of the government of
by default.
Rwanda.
Yes,
absolutely.
okay.
By design.
By design. I prefer that term. I've learned something new today. By design. Yes. Yes. Tell us, please, what the board's focus, if any, is on gender and gender issues.
The board focused very much on the private sector development, really fast-tracking the development of the country by focusing on the private sector. On the private sector now, in the context of Rwanda, Rwanda has a strong and really deep focus and commitment to gender empowerment, both political empowerment and economic and social empowerment. So clearly that cuts across all government institutions, including the Rwanda Development Board. So the Rwanda Development Board we ensure that when we focus on the private sector development, we look also very particularly, most particularly at companies, SMEs that are owned or managed by women. We know that women face a number of challenges. We will, for the first time, the Rwanda Development Board, in partnership with the International Trade Center, which is based in Geneva, for the first time will host on the African continent the World Export Development Forum. It will be back-to-back with women vendors. So what will happen? We'll bring women-owned companies from all over the world, but also African companies owned by women, and organize linkages, business-to-business linkages. It's about preparing, we are in the process right now of preparing them to these business-to-business meetings and deals, transactions that will happen between the 15th and the 17th of September in this year in Kigali.
So the idea then is to begin to get women on the continent, particularly Rwandan women, to start looking at their businesses as international organizations, and the possibility of beginning to do cross-country transactions.
Absolutely, absolutely. The idea is to get women in businesses to move beyond operating at a national level, to start going international. And we know that going international will not happen without linkages to global companies. So what we're doing, it is to bring those global companies, to make them understand that women-owned companies have specific services to offer, are as competent, they provide quality, they respect the standards, and at the same time, working with women companies, women-owned companies, have a huge impact on the development of the society,
and the
has
economy.
a huge impact on the economy. So the idea is now to bring those global companies and negotiate, help those women-owned companies to negotiate, transaction deals, to negotiate procurement deals, and be part of this supply chain. What I was just addressing earlier on about the global supply chain, regional supply chains, that doesn't happen if global players don't start to outsource 1% or 5% of their supplies from companies that are operating in developing countries, that are operating on the African continent, be it in Rwanda or other African countries. So we are excited about hosting it, because it is the first time in the history of the World Export Development Forum that it will be hosted on the African continent.
Well, congratulations on that milestone. I guess a question that I can draw from this for our viewers would be, When women begin to play beyond the national level, then some of the challenges are financial. What sort of steps are you taking in your capacity to give them the right backing required, or to get the banks interested, fiscal policies that will help women begin to play at international levels?
First of all, I will agree that financial constraints are probably much heavier on women than on men. But what we're putting in place is really to provide, to work with financial institutions in such to reduce the risk, that real or perceived risk that they consider to be there with women-owned company. And the way we do it, it's by working with guarantee funds and cover part of the risk or all of the risk. We would not like to cover all the risk. We still want commercial banks to cover part of the risk, even if it is a minimal part of the risk, 20%, but we need them to have a stake in that. Otherwise, they won't be doing their job as banks. But we are putting in place systems in Rwanda where we cover those risks and therefore encourage banks to lend to women, but not to women-owned companies, but not only to lend and to provide capital, but to provide patient capital. A capital that is of 1 or 2 years doesn't really allow an SME to grow. We need capital starting from 6 years. So we are negotiating that. Those are the kind of deals that we are negotiating, including we will enter into a formal partnership at the Rwanda Development Board with the Africa Guarantee Fund. The Africa Guarantee Fund that is co-owned by the African Development Bank. We are entering into a formal partnership just to be able to cover part of that. The government of Rwanda is providing guarantee funds, but we would like as well, it's not only about covering the risk, it's also about making sure that we get the right information. What we do on the side of the Rwanda Development Board, it is really to provide the information on the companies. Look at the companies, what are the potential, and then provide the capacity. Sometimes it's a matter of capacity. Provide the capacity that is needed by those SMEs to really be able to access a certain level of finance and be able to grow. And here I would like really to call to ambition. We tend to think only what I call micro enterprises when it comes to women. Well, women have the capacity, to go into any major sector of the economy. They have the capacity to grow, provided we address specifically those constraints they are faced with. And that is the job that we are really focusing on, removing those specific constraints.
It would appear to me that the work that you're doing falls in line completely with the Winihin Jemide series, and what we are trying to say is possible for women. As one last question, please, what sort of training are the women getting, the owners of the SMEs getting to prepare them to present before banks and before your board, and also to prepare them for the international cross-border trading?
Oh, it's a very focused training that, and we have started it now for a few months. It is a very focused training. It's basically about preparing to a transaction, preparing to a transaction deal, making sure that they got all their right information in terms of their market, the market they are operating in terms of any interest to capital, if they would like to open their capital, in terms of also their projection of growth projections they are in. So it's really very much a business conversation we are preparing them for. And of course, we will not get all the women-owned enterprise. We will have to be selective. But we will select those that are more likely to seal transaction deals.
And to succeed thereafter.
And succeed, because if they succeed, we know exactly that they will create jobs. There will be a trickle-down effect. They will create jobs, they will provide employment, but also they will serve as a model to other women-owned companies. And again, there is no barriers to that. we have started recently in Rwanda what we call the geek girl, what we call the geek girl. It's really young girls with brilliant ideas, innovation in ICT. Well, we conduct competition and we look at those different ideas and projects that they have applications in the ICT sector. And the most promising one are selected. And we link them up with companies that are ready to invest in those applications. Some of the, I'm not here to make, to do really an advertisement for specific companies, but one such company in Rwanda that has started such a program is the Millicom Group. It is Tigo. Has started such a program, just selecting, putting in place an incubation program, selecting brilliant applications in the ICT sector. So in a sector where traditionally we feel that, well, that's not a sector that will be necessarily geared towards girls and women. Well, in that sector, I have to say, they are being very innovative. They are putting in place applications that are useful to their communities, applications that allow to add value, and some of those applications will be picked up for funding. And later on, if the applications are successful, the company, Tigo, will consider taking equity in those companies. So those are few of the examples.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. This has been one of my most exciting interviews. We have addressed issues of succession, which we at the Winihin Jemide series are extremely passionate about. We've talked about fiscal structures that support women and gender emergence. We've talked about cross-cultural and cross-border transactions. And it is with great pleasure that I thank you, Madam, for sharing your time with us. And we would keep watching what the Rwandan Development Board is doing, and we wish you every success, and we're excited.
Thank you.